So now we're going to move on to our featured keynote speaker. Now look, we've sat down as an executive team and we've decided when we bring an external speaker out, we want to be about bringing things back into the community. We had Bert Jacobs last year. You heard his Life is Good story. This year we have an amazing individual who was named a CNN hero a couple years ago, and he's going to talk to us about his evolution and what he's found in his quest to bring water to the world. So I would like to bring up Doc Hendley from Wine to Water to tell us his story.
Thank y'all so much for having us today. But before I actually talk about the work that we do at Wine to Water, I think it's important to know a little bit about my background so you kind of can understand a little bit about the culture of our organization and why we do things the way that we do things. So I was born and raised in the Carolinas, and I grew up in a family that was extremely exceptional in every way that you can imagine, minus myself, of course. So there was 3 different kind of areas where my family would measure success. And the first was we were a pretty big sports family, so athletics was really important. And my dream was to be just like my granddaddy, who I was named after. He reminded me of John Wayne. He was really kind of built like a brick house, and he played football back in the days when they had the leather helmets, and he was really good. He actually had a chance to play on the varsity team at 8th grade. He faced a senior, and he went up and he smashed him in the nose and busted his nose, and the coach said, well, it looks like you want to be here more than that guy. So he played football all the way through, was an All-American at Clemson, and then went on to play for the Pittsburgh Steelers after that. I never made it to the Steelers. I didn't do so well in football. I was what some people call maybe a little bit of a late bloomer. I was a little slower, not quite as strong, not quite as big as everybody else in high school. So I realized I was never going to reach my dream of being like my granddaddy, because most of my time was actually spent on the bench instead of actually on the field. So I switched sports. I thought, well, gosh, I really enjoy basketball. I know I'm not going to be as tall as everybody else, but maybe I can be like a point guard and do well. So I started trying to play basketball and trying to get past the fact that I wasn't quite as tall as everybody else. But what made matters worse is that my younger brother, by 5 years, he turned out to be 6'9". So that was another shot, kind of to my confidence level there when I'm getting dunked on in the backyard by my, 13-year-old brother. And so, of course, he went on to play professional basketball all over the world, and I didn't do that myself. So I picked one more. I'm like, what about golf, for God's sakes? I mean, it's a stick and a ball. There's nobody chasing me here. Like, I got this sport. I can do this sport. So I started playing golf. Me and my cousin, we teamed up together. My granddaddy actually would pick us up from school and take us to the golf course, and we would start to enter these tournaments together. And I noticed, he was killing it. He was 1 or 2 right off the top of the leaderboard every tournament, and I was 1 or 2 right off of the very bottom of the leaderboard every tournament. And he went on, of course, he's on the PGA Tour right now, no joke. He won the U.S. Open a handful of years ago. His name's Lucas Glover. He's pretty awesome at golf, and I'm never really made it to the tour. So athletics wasn't really where it was going to be for me. So number 2 in my family, I got another shot. 2 out of 3, I could do this, was school. That one didn't work out too well for me either. I was a disaster of a student. If you put me in a chair behind a desk in a classroom for hours every day and put a teacher in the front that's going to preach at me for hours every day, and I'm expected to remember all that information and then regurgitate it on a test on Friday, like, my brain does not function that way. So I grew up just thinking I was stupid because I couldn't do like my sister, who was like the very top of the class. I was literally there when she made her first and only B. In her whole scholastic career, I was there, and she wept. She literally wept when she saw a B. I would literally also cry if I saw a B on my report card. Whole opposite reason, though. Like, I was just tears of joy that I got one of those. Like, I actually had a teacher, I couldn't sit still. So it was before all the, like, ADD stuff and all the disorders they got now. Like, I had a teacher, no joke, in 4th grade, duct tape me to my chair because I kept getting out. She'd probably be in jail now if that was the case. But so school didn't work out for me. The last one more shot for me. My daddy was a preacher man growing up. So number 3 is just, if you're just good at being good, then you're going to get a pass. That was a disaster for me as well. So I got 3 strikes on me. And when I was a younger person, I thought being good just meant following the rules. And the one thing I was actually really excelled in was breaking rules. And so it kind of really didn't work out for me. Like, I made it my life's mission and passion when somebody put a rule in front of me. I would try to find a way to break it that no one's ever found before, like a unique way to break this rule. And so because of that, me and my daddy, we butted heads quite a bit growing up. And I got really just frustrated with everything. By the time I got out of high school, I only made it through a couple months of college. I dropped out. I just had the idea. I wanted to get as far away from the Carolinas as I could. I wanted to get out. Had some family out in Montana. I had this dream I was just going to melt away in the mountains of Montana and work on a horse ranch and just never be heard from again. And so I got a job on a horse ranch out there, and I had this vision in my head. I'd be like the Marlboro Man, walking the range, saddle slung over his shoulder, or John Wayne like in those old movies. The job wasn't quite as glorious as those old TV shows make it out to be. I didn't make much money, so I lived in the barn with the horses for quite a while, and I ended up, 90% of my job is literally just shoveling horse manure all day long. I got to ride about 10% of the time. But I started noticing something that began to be, it's something that began to happen quite often in my life after this stage, is that when I least expected it, probably when I was at my lowest point ever, there would be this gift that would just come out of nowhere for no reason that I can understand. And the majority of the time it comes in the shape of a person. And out in Montana, it was my uncle. I grew up in the South under a lot of different circumstances, and he didn't really do the whole church thing all that much, but he started this group Friday morning for guys, and he called the group the Dirtbags. And these guys from all different walks of life would come in. You have addicts coming in there. You've got like head of motorcycle gangs coming in there, all different walks. And he helped me for the first time really feel like I wasn't a mistake. I wasn't an unwanted outcast, that there was a place for me. That's what he did well in his life. So it was the first time in my life I kind of saw a little bit of a spark, I guess, of hope that maybe I wasn't a complete lost cause. And after I spent some time in that horse ranch, I continued to kind of wander around. I'm an avid motorcycle rider. And so I just took my bike and continued to ride around the country and working odd jobs for quite a few years. And I finally landed back in the Carolinas, and I landed a job in the restaurant industry. Trying to work my way a little bit, try to pay my way to get a college degree through school. And so I'm just starting to serve tables, serve people their food. And I actually really fell in love with that job, just serving people food. I got paid quite a bit better than I did at the horse ranch, but it wasn't the money why I liked the job. I loved it that I had the opportunity to have a positive impact on these people's day just by doing my job. If I serve them a hot meal with a smile and a good conversation, then I can positively influence this person's day. So I started to really enjoy that, and years go on, I got the promotion of all promotions for a person in the restaurant industry, and that's when you get to become a bartender. That is it. That's the top. You don't want to go anywhere from there. You don't want to get into management because then you're going back down. You want to stay a bartender. And so I got to be a bartender, and I thought I had arrived at life. That's all I want to do for the rest of my life. I was having an awesome time, making even better money than serving, and even more than all that kind of stuff, and even the fun nightlife and all that. It was one of the coolest things to be at, especially my favorite bar I worked at was this old Irish pub. There's all walks of life in front of you. You'd have CEOs of a company in a white collar sitting next to a school teacher, next to a construction worker, next to a stay-at-home mama. And nobody at that bar was there to measure up or down or to each other. Everybody was there just to have a cold pint of beer, take a deep breath, have a good conversation, forget about their day. And it was one of the first communities that I ever really felt really, truly welcome just to be myself. All of me, good, bad, doesn't matter. And I was accepted just for that. I loved my job when people would come in and they would celebrate with me. They're getting ready to get married. They're going to come do their bachelor party, their bachelorette party, or they've got a promotion, or they just had a kid, or maybe things aren't going so good. Maybe they Their marriage is falling apart. Maybe they just lost a job. Maybe they just lost a loved one. I got to be the guy that did all that with my crew, with these regulars. And so why am I up here? Why am I not still back there at the bar? I don't really know. I don't know why. I guess I stopped asking those questions a long time ago, but I remember exactly when it all changed for me. This was December 2003. I kind of got into a point in my life where I make a lot of mistakes, but sometimes I can't just make one or two and be done with it and move on. I make like 50 all at one time. And so I was at one of those kind of low points in my life again where I just couldn't seem to figure anything out. And I had a very close friend of mine that was a great encouragement to me during that time, who encouraged me to not be stuck, I guess, in the gutter. And so I took a couple weeks off the bar. I had a couple weeks off of school. I had my last semester coming up of school, and I asked for 2 weeks off for Christmas break. And I just went home just to kind of get away. And in the middle of the night, in my bed one night, that phrase you see on the screen there, just like that, was stuck in my head. And I couldn't get it out. Just like a broken record. It was like wine to water, wine to water. I didn't hear anything or whatever. I can't really explain it. It was just like a thought. But I obviously heard it the other way around. My daddy was a preacher man growing up, so I heard about the water to wine story. I knew all about that, but why in the world is it stuck in my head, and why is it backwards? I didn't know. I thought maybe it was a cool idea for a kind of a country song. I like to actually play a little bit of music, and so I'm like, this would be a really cool idea for a song. So I wrote it down on the paper, and right when I could see the words written out on the page in front of me, I just had this real, I don't know, this nervous feeling in my stomach. I knew that it was supposed to be something else. I didn't know what. I couldn't sleep at this time. My mind's going crazy. I'm all knotted up inside. And so I went down to my parents' computer that I was just learning how to use at the time. And I literally just started learning what Google was. I didn't even know what it was. Y'all were probably a little more advanced than me in 2003. I just learned what Google was. So I learned you could just Google things and information would come up. And so I put in like water. I dealt with wine every day at my job, so I'm like, maybe I'm supposed to know something about water. No idea what's going on. I put in something like water issues or water problems, and what filled the screen up on that computer is what altered the course of my life. I remember reading and seeing pictures and learning that these women and kids in these developing countries that are walking hours and hours to get their water. And then that water they're getting is making these young kids especially sick, and unfortunately was by far the number one cause of death in young kids. Why they're not reaching the age of 5 in the world is because of waterborne illnesses. I knew all about HIV/AIDS. That was number 2. I even did some like fun campaigns with musicians that do the red ribbon campaigns. We'll do that for HIV/AIDS. Malaria, number 3. At the time, tuberculosis was number 4. Now it's measles. Water kills more than all 3 of those combined together. But I never heard anything about it. So I couldn't sleep. I started to jot down some notes on that piece of paper, and 6 weeks later, we'd held the first Wine to Water event. I figured, I got to figure out a way to raise some money to help these people get a well or a water filter or something. So about 6 weeks, February 2004, we held the first Wine to Water event in one of the bars that I had worked with in North Carolina. And there was another bar on there that night when we were all done and kind of counting up the donations. He was like, man, this is an awesome idea. We had free wine donated. We had some free music from the local musicians. We had did this really fun wine tasting. We had free food. Like the whole venue was for free. So the guy was like really excited. He's like, I got a restaurant across town. Can we do one of these at my place? I'm like, well, I guess we could do another one. I hadn't really thought much past this one. So we did another one, and more money came in. Before I know it, I opened a bank account and a P.O. box, and people just started sending me checks. And we got, a bank account that started growing with like literally tens of thousands of dollars in it. And I had no clue. I had no clue how to turn it into this stuff right here. No clue. In fact, I even got a little nervous later on thinking I could have even been doing something illegal because I didn't even have any charity status or nothing. I just started taking people's money. But one of our first volunteers was a CPA, and I still don't even exactly know what that stands for, but she really helped us out with the money and helped us figure that out. So we were all good. But how do I take this money that we've earned in North Carolina and turn it into this? And I've never been to these places. So my thought was, I'll just keep being a bartender. I'll raise the money. I'm just going to donate that money to an already established organization. That's what I'm going to do. That makes sense. I don't know how to dig a well. I don't need to learn how to dig a well. So I got a meeting with a group, again, based out of North Carolina. I did a lot of research on their organization, found out over 90% of their money, went to programs, which was important to me, because I had worked really hard to raise this money. And so I just wanted to know, if I donated money, is there a way I can make it all go to water? Because that's really what I was passionate about. Not that there's anything wrong with the other things of like education and health that they're doing, but I'm really passionate about water. So I went to go meet with a guy that he used to be their head well driller, but the time I met him, this was a large international organization as well. I mean, very, very big group. He was the head of all their programs at this time. And he invited me to come meet with him and talk, and I kind of grilled him, like, what if I give you this money, how do I know where it goes and where it's going to get there? And he was gracious, listened, and then he asked me a question at the end. He said, why are you doing this? And I don't even know if I had a good answer for him. I think I said something like, I don't really know, but I just know for the first time in my life, I feel like I have the ability to have a positive impact on the world instead of always a negative one. So if you'll just take this money that I've been raising and do good with it, I'll bring you a check every month or two, and that's what we'll do. And he said, I'll tell you what, why don't you keep your money? And why don't you go put your notice in at your bar, and why don't you come work for me? I think this wine to water thing that you've got going on, I think it might work. I think you've got a community of people there in the bar that'll support this organization. But you need to see what it's like. You need to be there in the field. You don't need to just read stories on the computer. So why don't you come work for me? And that's when I got my first opportunity to go to the field, and this was the first place I went. 6 months after the first event, this was around August of 2004, I was on a plane to the western region of Sudan. I moved to Darfur, Sudan, in the middle of the genocide there, and lived there for a year. And it was a difficult time for me. It was one of the hardest times of my life in a number of ways. One, you can imagine, I'm going there, and you could probably tell by the way I talk and from my background that I was born in a somewhat Southern Christian conservative white home in the South of the United States. And here I am moving to a tribal, black African, 95% Islamic community in Sudan. I don't think there's a more of an opposite place on the planet for a guy like me to go. And to be honest, I was terrified. I watched the news all those weeks leading up and tried to learn everything, and all I saw was just negative, bad stuff. I was terrified. And my first 2 weeks on the ground in this place, I could not have felt more ashamed because it was all a lie. These people that I got to do life with for that year were some of the most kind and loving and generous and welcoming people that I've ever met in my life. And again, they accepted me just the way I was, no matter of all those differences that I just listed off to you. I didn't have the money. Even though we'd been raising a little bit, we didn't have the money for a nice, expensive, hundreds of thousands of dollars of drilling machines. So that year we went around and found broken wells. So I met a group of guys of locals there that said, look, we don't need more new wells from you guys. We've got plenty of those from organizations and people in the past that have come and put them in. Can you just help us fix the ones that are broken? And I did a little research and found out that in the entire sub-Saharan African region, over 60% of the wells that have been put in by other NGOs or governments or organizations or churches are just sitting there broken. And so we assembled a team of guys and went around and began fixing these wells, and we fixed like hundreds of them all over the desert. And then it kind of hit me one day like, I thought I was doing good, but that's not good enough because I'm not going to be here forever. And the reason why these wells are broken is because the local people don't know how to fix them themselves. So towards the end of my time, I started getting excited, like, well, what if we changed the way we did things? What if we didn't just go give something for free, like a free fixed well or a free water filter or this? What if we taught the people how to access their own answers to their problems? What if we taught them how to fix their own wells, left them with toolkits and supplies and materials and training, education, so that they could access their own clean water? Wouldn't that make more sense than just going and putting a well on the ground and leaving and never coming back? So when my view of how charitable work should be done began to shift towards that, empowering local people, I got really excited and I wanted to come home. And There were still a few more difficult things that happened in Darfur that made it a little harder for me to come home, really excited. We worked specifically in rebel-controlled areas in Sudan, and just briefly, the crisis that was going on in Darfur, you have the government of Sudan. It was two Islamic groups, but basically one had a nomadic Arab background, which was in power in Khartoum, which is the capital. And the Darfur is a more tribal black African farming community that had been there for thousands of years. And those two groups have kind of battled each other for years. But now that the power was coming from the government, they began to fund their tribe in Darfur to either, and basically gave them a mandate. You can kill them or you can run them out of the country to neighboring Chad. You can do whatever you want. Here's the money, here's the training, here's the resources, go. And so that was basically the issue. And then these rebel groups began to spring up and fight back against the government to try to protect their area. And those areas, none of the other organizations were able to work in because a lot of them were under the United Nations rules, and those areas were United Nations no-go zones. But I wasn't under anybody's rules, and so I was able to work in those areas. And because of that, we had a lot of kind of not so good situations. The bad guys there that were being funded to kill these people were called the Janjaweed. So in the local language, Janjaweed means the evil horseman. Because when the government would come and drop bombs with their helicopters, the Janjaweed would come in on their horses, their camels, and their machine guns and swords and things and take care of whoever was still around. So they were a fearful group. A lot of people obviously fled any of the areas where they were in, and we had been stopped by the Janjaweed before. They pulled all my guys out of the vehicles and smashed them with their machine guns and threatened to kill us, and basically said if they find out that we're going to continue to support their enemies, that they will next time they weren't going to allow us to survive. And not too long after that, in one of the areas where we were in, there was a cholera outbreak, and I gave all my guys the opportunity to stay. I told them I understand. I didn't have wife and kids at the time, so I said, look, you guys need to stay. I understand. I'm going to go. And all of my guys, actually, minus the guy in the black there, who was one of my best friends in the world, but he was sick with malaria, or he would have come as well. They all said, no, we're not going to have you go back there alone. And so we went back and worked, and we were able to get through and work in the area, but on our way back out, we were coming to this village that had already been kind of shot up. It was like a ghost town kind of, but I could see some horses and camels up on the hill, we knew that wasn't a good sign. We didn't see anybody yet, and we were driving down the road. I'm driving the lead vehicle, and I'm kind of thinking, what do I need to do? Do I try to turn around and go back, or what do we do? And as I'm getting closer, I started noticing like 2 or 3 people on this side of the road, 2 or 3 people on that side of the road, and they were kind of hidden behind these like trees and rocks. And the last time they stopped us, they just jumped in the road, shot their gun off, and stopped us. And so this time wasn't that, and my heart's pounding. I'm like, what do I do? And before I could really think, because I'm kind of arguing in my head, do I stop and try to talk with them? I've got my arm out the window, my hand on the steering wheel, and I felt my foot. It just made the decision for me. My foot just hit the gas, and I'm like, all right, we're going to go. That's what we're going to do. And so I just hit the gas at almost the same exact time that my foot hit the pedal. There was a guy just caught out of the corner of my eye who was following me with his machine gun, and he shot, and I could like feel the shock wave from that barrel. And then a couple other guys started shooting on this side, a couple other guys, and I could hear the bullets as they're whizzing by. And my guys behind me, they've got these little radios, and they're screaming, in Arabic, they're digiga, we need to stop. And I'm like screaming back, and I'm like, la la, comes to the guy, like, no man, no, like 5 more minutes, you got to make it through. They had their tire shot out, so they didn't think they were going to make it. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, dude, I've driven some of these country roads and had a tire blow out, and you can go a decent ways on a rim if you need to, if you have to. And I'm like, you got 5 minutes. You follow me for 5 minutes. So we pulled out of the ambush, and I believe, I don't know if any of you guys in here are NASCAR fans. We're a bit of NASCAR fans in North Carolina, but we would have made the most well-oiled pit crew super proud the way we changed that tire that day. And we didn't have one of those like, little guns. We had this little tire iron that was just this little X thing. We had that thing off and changed in like 90 seconds and gone back and kind of back out in our compound. And there was, I was kind of looking over our truck later, just seeing, what had happened. I saw my gas tank had been shot out, which I had 2 of them, so I was able to switch to the other one. noticed a couple bullet holes, and there was one bullet hole that caught my eye. It had come in through the back window of my Land Cruiser, and it looked like it was on point, on target to hit me right square in the head or the back of the neck, like the way it was positioned. So I opened the door and I looked, and I kept this cardboard box of chlorine tablets right behind my seat, what we used would treat the water supply. And you could see a perfect line from where the hole went in the back window and then started skimming across the top of that box. There's a little curly Q cardboard that was where the bullet was skimming across, headed straight for my head. But I didn't see anything in the dash. I didn't see a hole in the seat. So I got closer on that box, and on the very edge of that box, just before that bullet was getting ready to slam into my head, that line on that box for some reason took an almost 90-degree turn and just went that way. And I was like, no way. And so I kind of look, and I drew a new line now with my finger, and sure enough, I could see this little hole in the side of the truck. And I stuck my head out, and there's this big bulge of metal where for some reason that bullet went in the back, decided it was going to go that way, and went that way. And even that, I didn't even think about that much. I was just so like my adrenaline pumping. I didn't even think much about that the rest of my time there in Darfur, but I think about that a lot now. I don't have any answers. I think I got more questions in life than I got answers, but I don't know. I like to think maybe, I know my mama, even though we butted heads quite a bit growing up, I know she was saying a lot of prayers for me while I was there, and I like to hope that somebody maybe heard those, and that's why I'm still here. And I came back home not too long after that. Unfortunately, the Janjaweed was able to capture one of my friends on my team, and they executed him just before I came home. It left him with wife and kids. And so by the time I got back home, I was pretty defeated. I'm the kind of person that if I look back at a year like that or look back at my time, I may have done 4 or 5 or 6 things out of 10 right, but I can't see the things that I've done right. I can't see the things that I've done well. I can only see my mistakes. I can only see my failures. And so I was pretty discouraged when I came home, and I was just, I think, going to go back to just being a bartender and just kind of, I'll raise some money here and there, but I just don't have what it takes to do this. And I would have definitely given up had I not met my wife. And I met her in a bar, of course. So I was just craving some good old like classic rock, and there was this local Leonard Skinner cover band playing. And I'm being super emo, so I don't want to talk to nobody anyway. So I get in the bar. I'm in the darkest corner of this bar that I can find. I'm just wanting to be by myself. And one of my favorite songs, pop song, Freebird. And, sometimes when I really don't care who's listening or if I'm by myself, I sing in this like Michael Jackson falsetto voice kind of thing, And so I sing Freebird, and I'm like, I'm as free as a bird now. Being that weird guy singing to himself, in the corner. And in the middle of the song, there's like double doors like the ones on the end of this room here. They like swing open, all right? And light shines in from the street. and this whole pack of really smoking hot girls walked into the bar, a whole pack of them, And I've been in the desert for a year. So I was like, holy moly. But I had this thing, us bartenders, we have these rules that they're unspoken and unwritten. But one of the rules is if you're by yourself, you never hit on a girl in a pack of girls, because they will instantly turn into a ravenous pack of wild wolves and tear you apart, limb from limb. I've seen it 100 times, so I'm like, whoa, I have no chance, I'm as free. I went right back to singing. And no joke, a few minutes later, I get a tap on my shoulder. I turn around, and I'm not kidding y'all. The smokingest, hottest one in the entire group had come up to me, stuck her hand out, smiled. She's like, hi, my name's Amber. What's your name? Big smile. And I'm like, oh, dear Lord. Okay. Lower the voice. Stick your hand out. Amber, it's nice to meet you. My name's Doc. Shake her hand, look her in the eye. And she's like, oh, Doc, so you're a doctor? I'm like, yes, no. Not a doctor. Everybody calls me Doc. I want people to think it's kind of like this cool cowboy Doc Holliday thing, which is not the case. But that's what I want her to think. So just call me Doc. Everybody calls me Doc. She's like, your real name's Doc. Your parents named you Doc. I'm like, no, it's not the case. And she's like sitting there now, like tapping her foot, looking at me. She's like, are you going to tell me your real name or what? And I'm like, lady, I just met you. Why are you demanding my real name? And so I'm like, all right, look, my real name is Dixon. I was named after my granddaddy, the football player. But when I was born, my sister, the really smart one, well, she wasn't really that smart when she was 2, so she couldn't pronounce Dixon, so she called me Dick Doc, okay? So, unfortunately, a large percentage of my family actually called me Dick Doc, until somewhere along the way, they just chopped off the dick part and left the doc part, and that's how I got Doc. Like, this is not a good story. She's doing that right there in my face. She's laughing at me now in my face, which later on I was to find out is her favorite thing to do, is to make fun of me anyway. So it worked out really well in the end. But I'll tell y'all, as strikingly beautiful as she is, I don't even know if I would be here at all right now if it wasn't for her. Like I was saying before, when I get so low in my life and I feel like I just can't see the light of day, there's this gift that comes, and she was the greatest gift that the good Lord ever gave me. And with her help, I was able to, as you can see, it's not always the easiest, but I pulled the pieces back together after about a year, and she helped me find the courage. Well, I didn't have it no more. And slowly began to build this organization, Wine to Water. The next place that we went, we began to work in Southeast Asia. Again, wells was mainly what I did, and so I found a group of local guys there. We pieced together this drilling machine. Again, we didn't have the finances to do these big hundreds to thousands of dollar machines, and so we pieced this together using local people, local materials, and we were starting to dig wells at literally 5 times less the cost of the other organizations. Because when our well machine or actual wells would break, they were all made out of local parts, so our little guys would just hop on the scooter and go off to the market and come back and fix it. And from there, I began to realize it's not just wells that we need. That's not going to act. There's plenty of places that, like this area here in northern Uganda, that people have access to plenty of water from like the northern parts of Uganda where the Nile River is formed. There's all this water. It's just filthy. They're drinking it. It's just dirty. So we need to get into filtration. So we began using these biosand filters. Again, local people, local materials. One of these biosand filters we could put in a school or an orphanage and clean water for up to 100 kids for 10 years. With little to no maintenance on one of those things, and cost us under $100 to produce it, to put it in a school or an orphanage, and to teach the people how to maintain it. From there, we began to use another technology made out of ceramics, and that's my oldest son there. His name is Beatty. We have a ceramic factory. This one's in the Dominican Republic. We have another one in East Africa as well, in Tanzania, and we make water filters out of clay. You can take a local clay source in a community or an island or somewhere in East Africa, and instead of just like you would in school, like an art class, when you would take clay and just mix it with water and then fire it in a kiln and it would hold water or hold something, we mix sawdust, really fine-grained particle sawdust, in with the clay mixture so that when you fire it, that clay is porous. You can't see the pores on it, but that water is able to trickle out of there. But we also add colloidal silver, which a lot of you may know is an antimicrobial. So we add colloidal silver, sawdust. We fire these, and we're able to get beyond our EPA standards clean water with these water filters, and they last for 5 years for a family and cost us right around $50 to make one, to give a family clean water for 5 years. And it's so much fun, especially when we travel together as a team or bring volunteers or come as a family, and you give out a filter and you see somebody like this that's bringing it home, and they know the value of this thing. They cherish it. They bring it back with them. They know that their entire lives are getting ready to change. We do all these fun metrics that you guys probably would be really interested in. We love the numbers and the data with it, where we're watching. When you put a water filter in a community, what happens? And you'll see lost school days drop, lost work days for the parents drops, income goes up because now they're working more and they're not spending money on medicines, and the in-school rate skyrockets. The overall quality of life in the community just skyrockets. The numbers are staggering just because they got one of those right there. So as time went on, we began to grow, and another crisis really popped up that was pulling at my heart. It's in Syria. When that really got bad, I learned about 1,500 families on the Syrian border, these refugees, and I was really at a loss because as an organization, we mainly focused on, local people, local materials. So we were doing these filters or wells, the biosand or the ceramic. But this was a crisis where if I was going to be able to help these people inside Syria, it's the middle of a war. I'm going to have to figure out a way to sneak in there. And on top of that, I can't just begin to teach them how to start a factory. But that wasn't possible. It's in the middle of a war. So we needed a different type of technology. So I began to do a little research, and I found out there's another type of technology for water filters that came from the concept of kidney dialysis. And there was a company that made water filters for backpackers and hikers. They thought, gosh, if we can clean blood with this, it's called hollow fiber membrane technology. If we can clean blood with it, why can't we clean water? And so this company that made filters for backpackers, really to make a profit, called Sawyer, I was able to go meet with their CEO and tell him what I was wanting to do. And he was an amazing guy. And he's like, I tell you what, I'll help you any way we can. We'll get you the filters. They'll be broken down in pieces and components because we won't have our crew put them together. And you'll basically just get them at our cost. So, we were able to save quite a bit of money. And so by the time we get a filter, we get the bucket, we get somebody in to teach and train the people how to use it. It was, again, around about $50 per family or school because these filters can filter water for quite a bit of people. And they also last for 10 years. And I was I was trying to figure out how am I going to raise the money because there's 1,500 families. For us, especially at that time, 45, that's more, 50, 20, what's that, $75,000? I don't know. That's a lot of money. How do I raise that? I was actually at an event, it was kind of like this, and at the end, they had a Q&A, and somebody raised their hand, like, what can we do to help? And I'm like, well, I'm actually trying to figure out how to raise funds for these 1,500 families. I know the filter I need, and I can get it immediately. We just need to raise the funds for it. But, thank you all for having us. And I kind of went down. I'm hanging out. My wife was with me on this one, and we're having some coffee. And I noticed all this commotion going on, and we didn't really think much of it. And these people, after like an hour, they brought us this whole manila envelope full of money that they had gone out and raised in the audience and brought us to the dime the exact amount of money that we needed to do this work. Unbelievable. I was a few days later on a plane to Turkey, figuring out how to meet with some rebel groups with the Free Syria Army and sneak inside northern Syria to help get these filters to the people that needed it. So we partnered with an Islamic organization called Zakat, which in Arabic, it's their word for charity or to give. And these are some of the first recipients of those filters and the generosity of that group that we were able to partner with. And from there, not long after that, I'm flying in with these filters to Tacloban, which is where the super typhoon hit in the Philippines. This is a picture I took right after I got done with the airport, left the airport to start passing filters out. It was pretty devastating. And here's one of the first schools that we were able to help. This is what their water looked like before, after the hurricane had gone through the typhoon, and this is what it looks like coming out of that water filter. And we've been able to find a use now. We've had to learn how to adapt. I had a dream to just be local people, local materials, but sometimes you got to shift gears a little bit. And we wouldn't be able to get filters to people like Syria or even places like this, way up in the Amazon jungle, these tribes, because I can't fill one of those little dugout canoes with a bunch of these big biosand filters. I just can't do it. And I can't start little factories all over Colombia because some of the villages are only maybe 30 or 40 people. So these filters have been a lifesaver for us on an emergency or disaster area. And it's one of the coolest things to travel, and we welcome you guys too. I mean, we offer volunteer trips if you ever have some vacation time to come and distribute some of these filters with us. It's one of the coolest things ever to see this way up in the Amazon jungle or out in Nepal, see one of these filters working, bringing people clean water. And towards the end of these last few years, I kind of want to wrap up. I'll tell you my last kind of down low moment was when I realized this organization began to outgrow what I could handle. I don't know I'm not the best boss or manager or whatever. I don't know how much about business. I don't know how to hire and fire people. And on top of that, I don't really like it. If somebody's not doing their job, I don't want to sit down and tell somebody that they're sucking at their job. I'm terrible at that. I started really struggling, keeping the wheels on this thing as the years were going on. And I was really looking for somebody to help. I need to still learn. I need to be led. And it was the craziest thing ever. About, honestly, probably days within, I thought, what I thought was probably going to be us having to close our doors, even though we had some amazing exposure from CNN and all these documentaries and stuff that were told in our work. I could not keep the wheels on this thing. And This is about 5 years ago. I put out a job search to find a CEO that would come and help lead this organization and build a team that I couldn't do. And we were able to find a guy, or he was able to find us, one way or the other, that had 10 years experience, special operations in the Navy. 10 years experience after that, he came back and worked with his brother-in-law to do a small technology startup company that went and grew from, like, the first year was super small. They were like 25,000 in sales, and then went on to be sold about a decade later on the New York Stock Exchange. And he was getting ready to look. He was on LinkedIn one day, getting ready to look at his next job. He had all these offers from people in the city. He's a Philly guy. And he just thought in his head and his wife, yeah, we're just going to keep moving on up, go to the city. That same day, I posted on LinkedIn for some reason. I'd never done a job thing like that before. I posted the CEO job position on LinkedIn. And he had had some time off with his wife, so he had just come from a winery. And he thought maybe because he was been searching wineries in the area, that's why the job title Wine to Water popped up on his feed, because he never would have seen it. And he saw it, and he read the job description. Him and his wife look at each other, and they, for some reason, said, this is what we're supposed to do. Like that, like in an instant. And a few weeks, months later, they moved their kids. They pulled them out of school in Philly, moved them to North Carolina. Our organization, now we have this amazing team. You're getting ready to meet a couple of folks upstairs, Brooke and Tony, who are a part of our team. Our team, they're all so unbelievably capable and amazing. That's why our organization is exactly where it is right now. Because of every time that something would come, whether it's the life cycle of myself or this organization, there would always be this amazing gift of a person come along at the right time needed. And that's now why we are the organization that we are. And I want to end with this last picture. I took this in one of the refugee camps inside Syria. And I like to leave with this because a lot of people think with all the places that I've gone, all the things that I've seen, that these places must just be so devastating, disasters, just depressing. Just like I was scared thinking when I first got into this, moving to Darfur, all those things that the world did a really good job of lying to me about. And you see those things sometimes, sure, like in the news when you see a kid that's just gotten blown up by something or things like that. Yes, those things do happen, but 99+% of the time when I'm in these refugee camps, when I'm in these slums, when I'm in these villages, this is what I see. Right there. And if I'm honest with you guys, these folks here, they've been the greatest gift of my life. These people that we get to work with. They may not believe the same thing that I believe. They may not believe anything at all. But the opportunity to love and serve and do life alongside these people in these different countries has just totally changed the entire course of my life. And I want to encourage y'all today that I don't think we all have to quit our jobs and hop on a plane and move to the Amazon jungle and join the Peace Corps to make a difference in the world. If we all were to do that, I think that would be a disaster because our own economy would collapse and we'd have to come back and save ourselves one day. So I don't think that's the answer. I mean, in a weird way, I feel like Wine to Water kind of found me, and that's why I'm doing this work, but that's not the answer. You have an opportunity every single day you go into work, every single day you rub shoulders with somebody next to you, you talk to somebody on the phone, every single day you have the opportunity to be a gift to somebody else. And you have no idea that person, what they may be going through and what you may have just brought them through in their life. So I just want to encourage y'all, the world and all is trying to tell us right now about how everything's going to hell in a handbasket, it's falling apart and everything. It's just, don't listen to that stuff. That is not the case. I believe we were created. I believe we were made specifically to love and to serve one another and to be a gift to each other. Y'all, I can't thank you enough for being a part of our story and what you're getting ready to see upstairs. Host Analytics has been so gracious to support hundreds and hundreds of filters so that we can continue this work that we're doing. And I think they're going to tell you a little bit more about that in a few minutes of where to go. But it's in that big, huge place where all the booths are, I think. We got a spot like right in the middle. You can come help us build some filters because we do have to put them together since they come to us all broken down. So we love to open that up with you guys. So if you'll come and
hang out, talk with us a little bit, learn more about what we're doing, build some filters. All thanks to Host Analytics for supporting those and paying off everything. The cost of the filter, the cost to get them where they need to go, all that has been sponsored by this amazing company that you guys are all tied in with and a part of, and that now I'm just thankful to know. And hopefully it's just the beginning of an amazing partnership with you guys. So y'all, I wish you nothing but blessings, and I thank you so much for having us today. Thank you.